we have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, so we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess we're looking for a nomination for Chairman Pro Tem for the rest of the meeting.
I'll nominate Don Brinkmeyer.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that was quick.
You're up, Don.
Railroad. Okay. Item 5, public appearances. The public's opportunity to speak on any item not on the agenda. I don't see anyone else out there. So we'll go on to item 6. Discuss and consider the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting of March 3rd, 2016. Everyone had a chance to review them? I looked at them quickly this afternoon.
I didn't see anything. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Fred and a second by Phyllis to approve the March 3rd, 2016 Plan Commission meeting minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, item 7, discuss and consider the request from Houston Properties, Inc. to extend the 10-year development period of the Arrowwood Village Planned Unit Development for another 10 years per 3025-115, parent H, parent 3 of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I think we can handle this before we get into the precise implementation plan. Basically, according to our ordinance, the general development plan is good for 10 years. The one for Arrowwood Village was approved initially in 1998. It was amended and extended in 2006, October of 2006, which means this will be expiring in October of 2016. So as long as the gentlemen are in here tonight, we figured we might as well extend it now. You know, these are local guys. They're not going anywhere. They're doing a great job with high-quality buildings. I don't know why we wouldn't extend this. So that would be our recommendation.
Anything else specifically we need to know, Lee?
No, I don't think they're going anywhere either, so.
Okay, anyone else on the commission have anything or questions? Or otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move that for approval of the request to extend the time frame for the completion of the Arrowwood Village PUD for an additional 10-year period from the date of the village board approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to extend the 10-year development period of the Arrowwood Village Planned Unit Development for another 10 years for 325-115, parent H, parent 3 of the zoning ordinance. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Item 8, discuss and consider application from Houston Properties, Inc. for approval of a precise implementation plan for the Astor Community Center and Independent Living Apartments, which features 68 units and a 4,400 square foot community center as part of the Arrowwood Village Planned Unit Development. Gentlemen?
Dwight Houston, Dennis Richardson, our senior engineer, and Dale's here. This is, make a correction, this would be Drumlin Residences.
Drumlin Residences? Okay.
What it is, it's, I think we're going to wind up with something like 62, 64 units, depending on how the final drawings come back. But it's it's basically what it's going to look like. It'll be the same, it'll be 68 or 64 two units. It'll be the same materials as we have on the memory care, 27 unit, and 1855 is going to blend into that with a lot of limestone, brick, and the smart board. siding. The roofs are 6 pitch and 8 pitch, same kind of pitch that's on the 27 unit, the Drummond Towers building. There's room for 60, how many cars downstairs?
66 underground stalls,
66 underground stalls, and we have
41 surface stalls, and 24 angled parking along the front.
out front.
And that should be in your revised packets
Where is that at?
that we just handed out. And basically, just to reiterate what Dwight said, right now we're at 62 units. The footprint of the building isn't changing. It's the dimensions of the units inside. So we're trying to figure out the best combination of single room, 2-bedroom, and bedroom and den units, trying to figure out a nice balance. So the overall footprint, it's still 105,000 square feet, three-story. That stays the same. It's just the units inside, the dimensions inside are changing.
Okay, then we also have a community room. That's about 4,400 square feet. And that will have a kitchen, restrooms, and things for the residents here that can use it for different activities and things like that. We're looking at about first floor will have like 22 units, and second and third floor have 20 each. I know it's looking. Shingles will be the same as on the other building, architectural shingles. Be some steel roofing on it to offset it like we have in the other buildings. Other than that, the staff report, they wanted a sidewalk up the back side of the building. Will be sidewalk up the back side of the building. People come in here and also enter through the parking lot on this side. It's 41 stalls back here. This might change just a little bit because we're going to add this sidewalk as recommended from Aaron, or Mike, whoever did it.
Yeah, for him.
Yeah, and on the front of the building here, the ramp up to the front, to the patio area.
Yeah, the stairway was removed. We showed a stairway before. We're just going with the ramp.
The building will be fully sprinklered and everything like that. We've got comments on the water hydrant, things like that. We're changing that per the request of the staff here.
Where do you enter the basement?
The garage will be entered on the alley going up to the to the memory care. The garage entrance is right in here on the side of the building. I missed anything so far?
There is a service door for the garage right in front of the white parked car. That little yellow door there, that's a service door there, and there's a service door next to the garage door too, to get into the basement.
Which will be over here.
We're looking at the two, I know Mike, your staff had mentioned, that there's 3 water services that service this lot. The one off East Reynolds will be a hydrant, per your suggestion. The 2 water services off the private roadway, you suggested about figuring out which one we need to use and capping the other. Both of those are 6-inch services. We got to find out from our plumber, being that it's fully sprinklered, we might need both those services for the building.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, you could use both services, and I think you need some just backflow preventer so it doesn't put water back in the main,
Sure.
on movement. But yeah, they do that.
And if we don't need both of them, then we'll we'll abandon the one out at the main line, but right now it looks like we might need both. Mike Hawkins, Snyder and Associates is working with Mike Maloney on the stormwater management. He sent me an email earlier today, and it looks like they haven't finished the calcs, but it sure looks, they're thinking that the detention pond,
Which is back here.
there's an existing detention here, that it looks like that should be sized enough to handle the water from the site as long as we separate the roof water and put that directly into the storm.
Yeah, well, we have a approved master stormwater plan from, 2006 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And with our new rules, that we just signed a new permit with the DNR2, it would just be the increased density. So Mike's all aware of that. Would be it's a higher level of infiltration and that sort of thing. But it's just for the added density. So the rest of the sites for future development don't have to give anything up for that.
Okay. And we're trying to maintain all the water on this site, like you say, so we don't have to worry about it, get down to the end here. I think we have a landscaping plan that we've put in that, and I think pretty much that stuff usually does exceed the requirements.
We will curb and gutter. I don't know if Aaron, you had mentioned that, but we will curb and gutter along the south side of that private road for now. And then once this other side's finished being developed, that'll have curb and gutter on that side. But for right now, we will curb and gutter that south side of that road to tie into the building and the landscaping.
And we intend to use this area as a staging area over here, so keep all the traffic and the clutter and stuff off of the East Reynolds Street. There's going to be some, but try to keep most of it over in this area. Construction traffic will all be coming in this area here, this driveway. We may cut this a little bit short, use this as a area so we don't hinder the people living in the Drummond Towers. Questions?
So just to clarify, the only differences in the handouts tonight, look like 5 fewer parking spots and getting rid of the stair on the corner and just having a ramp.
Correct. So the same amount of parking in the basement. A couple stalls were lost in the parking lot in the back due to configuration. And then same thing out front on East Reynolds. We lost a couple stalls there from what the architect had showed. Mike said due to the alignment and stuff. So we're still well above the requirement of how many stalls.
Yeah, I guess that was one of the comments I had. It's a planned unit development, so it's can kind of assign the number of parking spots you need. If it was strictly a regular apartment building per our zoning, you would need 2 spaces per unit, but that's pretty excessive for senior housing. There's studies that have shown they use quite a bit fewer spots than that. So I think the number that's on the site is adequate, even considering the community room, which could bring in additional people. Just the only other comment I had relative to the general development plan and the GDP, there was some, I think you specified between condos and apartments. You're consistent with the total number of apartment type units. And I guess in my mind, the ownership style of the units isn't really that important. They kind of go back and forth anyway, and I think they have at Drumlin Towers. It doesn't really affect the land use of the buildings or the demand for utilities. So the conditions I was recommending for approval to accept the number of parking spots as shown, I guess, on the revised handouts from tonight.
So just to be clear, it's 131 versus the 138 that's in our packet. That's my math anyway.
Yeah, I got 131 off the new drawings.
Okay.
I have a question. How many would be required under the existing code for this development as it stands right now?
If it was zoned as MR12, which would be the most comparable district, between the units and the community room, you'd have to get to 154. It's also worth noting, I think the memory care unit, which is right next door, had more spaces than they needed. It had about 14 more than they needed. So it pretty much balances out anyway. And then again, as I said, studies show that senior housing typically uses fewer units, fewer spaces.
Can I make a couple comments on that? One, I took a look at that study, and the conclusion on the study, though, I think if you look at it and compare it to single-family housing, yeah, there's quite a difference. But the conclusion of the study is that one of the conclusions is that it's similar to apartments or condominium units. So I don't know there's that much of a difference. The other thing that concerns me about it is that there's no restriction on this property to number one, ever be 55 and older housing, or two, that in the future it would end up being just a regular apartment building. And that's also a concern I think we have to look at this as being something other than senior housing, because we don't know what's going to happen over the next 20 to 30 years with this building. I think if you take this study that we have here, you could take the study and you can make the same argument for apartment buildings as you make for senior housing, that you wouldn't need as many units as what we have in our existing zoning code. So to move off of that does trouble me. I think that we should stay with the requirements of the code. Now, if there's a reason for not doing that, because of a PUD or some other reason, I guess I'd like to hear that and evaluate that. But otherwise, I'm concerned about it, reducing the number of parking spots, especially even as pointed out in the study. You have certain times of the year, even if you say this really is senior housing, and really what does that mean? I mean, if you have people that are 55 that are living there, to 65, they're probably using it similar to what you'd have in a regular apartment building, I would guess. But the issue is, even in what they were doing in this study, they were having, on Mother's Day, for example, they didn't have enough parking. So people would be coming to the units. And so, anyway, that's my concern when I look at it. There's no restriction, number one, that we're putting on the property, that it meet the Fair Housing Act requirements for 55 and older. We're not requiring that. And two, that under our code, I think we should apply the code as it is, because I think you can make the same argument for an apartment building you're making here under this study.
I think to answer your question on what's it going to be 20 or 30 years from now, is we designed this as a senior campus. One of the reasons that we put this unit here, we have a lot of people who husband and wives, one needs assistance, one doesn't. So one can live across the street, and also if someone needs dementia care or memory care, they can still, one of the spouses can live in the area and the other half can live over in one of the other facilities. So I think to answer your question, is it apartment or is it senior? Our intent is for this to be a senior campus. And if we look a little further, people are tending now to downsize at the 55, 60, 65 range. I mean, it's pretty much a trend in our society, or whatever you want to call it. So we're hoping to hit this market at this time. That's our intent. So that we do have these, they sell one car and they have one car, and they're downsizing. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but our intent is not to have, and we don't have that issue down there. We don't have school buses. We don't have any of that stuff in our complex, and we don't want to put a burden on the school district. But if you have apartment then you do put burdens on school districts and things like that. So. Another thing we found out too in this area is that people tend to live with us longer than just a year lease. We just keep renewing our leases. We don't have turnover. So that also helps reinforce the issue that we do have senior people. And we do have people moving into the assisted living and then from there to memory care. And it's a trend. We have people in our condo complexes that are selling their condos, downsizing, moving to the Drumlin Towers, and then they have the health issues that goes on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what's happening. That's what has been happening, and that's what we intend to happen down the road. We designed these buildings for assisted living, memory care. We've gone through all the criteria of getting them approved and all the agencies and stuff, and we're pretty proud of it.
So to address whether it stays senior, the zoning is the planned unit development, which means they have to stick with the general development plan, which did identify these as senior units. So if they were going to change to a non-55 and over, they would have to get that GDP amended.
How would we enforce that, though? You have to pull the building permit on the property? I mean, if they want to sell the complex, to someone, I don't know. Just to me, it seems like it'd be hard to enforce it.
What's the question? Parking or?
No, if the development would not be 55 and older type.
Would that be considered a zoning violation then, if the building was being used for something
So we'd
other
have to
than
use it
what
as
it
a
was
zoning
zoned for?
violation. Okay.
Which is enforceable.
When you got the different approvals, was it in mind to have any restrictions, or in terms of building the building? I mean, you said that you had gotten various approvals from various agencies. Was that in mind? Was that with the idea that they were going to be used for seniors?
I'm talking about the existing buildings,
Okay.
not this building. Is it the?
You got your federal.
Yeah, we have all the agencies that have to approve
Right.
to get your license for assisted living, CBRF, and RCAC buildings. And that's a long, drawn-out battle to get those licensed. And so what we want to do is keep those facilities working and occupied. And if you have people who, we're getting older, and if I need the facility,
I know,
or if my wife needs
55 restrictions didn't seem so, it seemed like it was really in the future when I first started here, but,
So we want to be able to keep these people in the same campus,
Right.
same
Right.
area. So that's our intent, and that's why we still have it. So
yep.
And you still have to abide by other agencies too, not just the Village of Cottage Grove. You've got the federal agencies, the state agencies, county.
Well, can I make a comment on that? For your 55 and older, all you need to do is be exempt from the Fair Housing Act. To be exempt from the Fair Housing Act, what you need to do is have 80% of your units have one individual in that unit that's 55 or older. The other units, 20% of them, you can have anybody in there.
Correct.
Plus, you have to have policies in place that state that, and you have to advertise it as for seniors. It's not as restrictive as what you're looking at on your others for your CBRF or for your memory care. And so the concern that I brought up is really, that's a pretty minimal requirement, and something you completely control whether you have it as senior or not. So the only thing that I'm hearing that we have as a way of enforcing it, to say why we should be reducing the parking, would be that it is included as part of the PUD as senior housing. My concern, obviously, with the study is that the study comes to the conclusion that that this type housing when you're looking at seniors for 55 and older, is very similar, says similar to condominiums and similar to apartments. So if we're requiring this, requiring apartments and condominiums to meet the 2 parking spots per 1 bedroom, and there's not a provision in our code for senior housing, it kind of makes sense why there's not, because that distinction was never made, because it's very similar to apartments and condominium units. And so we're saying, yeah, it's a little bit less, but if you look at what's in the report, it's not that much less for trips. I mean, you're looking at trips, they're saying that, the trips would be as high as 5.64, and then when they look at condominiums, they're looking at 5.86. I mean, we're not talking much variation here, but we're giving someone we're reducing a requirement for senior housing based on a study where I think someone with an apartment can come in and make the same argument under the same study to have parking reduced. And to me, that's troubling.
Is that FTE? Here, the trips that you're at, I'm not familiar with the report there, but I'm used to condominiums being the 8 to 9 trips a day, and the trips aren't necessarily just in 10 trips a day for a single-family home. They're not just the homeowner; those are public services, from garbage pickup to tree trimming to whatever it might be. And I think everybody can say even the trips 10 per home, you don't have 10 trips, as the resident, but you're going to have a background amount from public services.
So are you asking for a change in the ordinance then to?
No, this is-
No, just.
No, what I'm saying is, we have an ordinance in place, and
Right. But-
I don't see the distinction that we should be making unless it's the PUD itself, which I haven't looked at. If the PUD itself is restricting it in some way, then that still doesn't really come to the concern I have about using the study to support it. But
How many less parking spaces do they show if it was a regular apartment? How many?
It would need to be 155.
154,
154.
I'm not sure, 155?
If you're down to 62 units as opposed to what was in the plan, 62 times 2 is 124. If the community room stayed public, that needed 18.
It's not public.
That's not public though.
So we're still down below the
We're gonna make it.
130.
We might,
People that come in, we're not gonna have it.
it's not
Well,
public.
I understand, but there could be people using it
Yes.
who aren't part of the
Yes, yes.
center.
We're trying to make it a.
So that's 18.
So I'm at 142.
And we have 14 extra spots in the building next to it.
And we do believe that the Drumlin Towers, that parking lot's always empty. I'm gonna guess we way overbuilt that right next door, Drumlin Towers to the north. I mean,
West of that parking lot's always empty.
yeah, it's always empty. So I'm sure we've got plenty of extra stalls there too.
Do you manage the properties yourself?
Departments.
Memory care is also excessive.
So it sounds like, based on the ordinance, they'd be 11 under. Like we said, they're 14 over at the facility next door.
Are there any requirements, though, for those are separate ownerships, at least as legal title, correct?
I don't know, those both under the same.
Process.
Drumlin Towers is owned by Houston Properties.
Same one.
Same owner.
Is there cross easements or for driveway for parking?
There is for the driveway going back in.
Memory care, the 27 unit,
Yeah.
future 27 unit, and this building is cross easements.
Okay,
on the-
yeah.
How easy is it to get from one parking lot to another if somebody had to use a different parking lot to go to the...
They're all connected.
They're all connected, so
Right.
Yeah,
walking wouldn't be an issue.
yeah, and then if it's a community room that, if that's the portion that needs some extra parking with all the sidewalk, I mean, we're talking this parking and this parking here is never full. But otherwise, these are all tied by sidewalks, all these.
This parking here is never full either.
Well, it seems to me there's enough parking on the adjoining spots. I mean, you gotta consider, take into consideration a little diversity factor. You know, when you're looking at worst case scenario. We're splitting hairs for, what, 11 parking spots?
I think I'd be comfortable if we were to approve it requiring that there be cross-access easements for parking on all those parcels so that they would be tied together so that in the future, if they're ever split by ownerships, that the owners would still have the ability to use the other lots for parking. So that would, I think, from what I'm hearing, would address the concerns of there's not enough parking on one. Those individuals could park on the other.
I know the easement is cross-collateralized, if you want to call it, between one parcel to the other, I mean, the parking lot. I don't think that's an issue.
I think essentially
That we can do that.
what Mick is saying is that as long as there are cross easements for parking that run with the land, then if for some reason you sold off a building and someone else owned it, they would still be required to allow the parking there, and that's a way to deal with
To cover that.
this issue.
Yeah, I'm sure that's doable.
Okay.
That is not right. I'm so concerned about how this, going forward to the other development we have down there, do we have to change our process on how we develop that? If we gotta go into a different, I don't think this is gonna affect us one bit right now, but
No, but it will down.
I don't want to I want maybe legal advice on going forward with anything. If this is just an opinion, or is this something that's going to be set up going forward?
You mean with the other buildings you
Yeah.
build and the parking?
Yeah, we're going to build another 27 unit back in there. Right now, where it's designated. Is this going to, I don't know.
I'm a little reluctant to,
say
you know,
yes.
what is the, how does it read now, Aaron, for this? What is our ordinance, or what is it's not an apartment, it's senior housing. So how does the ordinance read for what we're doing?
The level of care wouldn't be high enough to call it an institutional land use, like a nursing home or the memory care facility, which is where those fell in. So it really does come back to the apartment land use. The GDP didn't address parking. You know, there's an opportunity in the GDP to request exceptions from the comparable zoning, and the parking aspect wasn't addressed in that. So the most comparable land use would be that, you know, apartment with the 2 spaces per unit for 2 bedrooms or less.
So how many spaces are we short?
We're not short. We're
Well,
not.
as
We
an,
use-
as an apartment, you're 13 short, right?
I think with the 62 units and the community room, it was 11 short. And then, as we said, there were 14 over at the memory care.
So does it make sense to, I see 2 other options besides the easements, is, does it make sense to request for an amendment now, since we're extending the GDP for an exception to the parking requirement? Or does it make sense for the Village of Cottage Grove to address senior development with a less parking? I mean.
We
I'm
can't
sure
do
there's
either tonight.
Correct, correct.
Right.
But I'm sure there's plenty of more data out there. It's becoming a big thing. You're gonna have more senior housing in areas, maybe not just here, but I know I'm just throwing those out there for suggestions, comments.
And if we didn't have the community center built in there, then we'd be all right. Is that right?
Or if you kept it private.
Right. Then we'd be all right with what we got.
But that's your intent, isn't it? That it'd be private?
It's private, but it's
If the Boy Scouts want to use it,
you
you
know,
know, kids of the residents that are there, their grandkids want to have a Boy Scout meeting there, you know, we don't want to say no to something like that. You know, we thought it'd be a nice feather in our cap to offer this up to the community as a little gathering place, you know, that ties into the residents.
that chapel in the bottom of our, for the community, and then there.
I guess if that's a stumbling point for us.
I just don't understand.
Well, from my perspective, I think there's plenty of parking, because whenever I'm down there, there's a lot of open spaces. So, and I, for one, don't want to see a bunch of parking lot.
And that's why we put the parking under the memory care, so we wouldn't have staff outside. And we wanted to keep that underneath so it looks like not like a big parking lot.
I agree with Fred. I think otherwise it turns into a parking ride.
Well, doesn't the suggestion that there be cross easements that you guys can, you know, people can park wherever in your vicinity there, address the issue?
Yeah, it would.
It does for me.
Mick, does that,
That's fine.
I think so. I mean,
yeah, okay.
And I mean, I'm playing on the word, he's calling it a campus anyway, so if you can park anywhere on the campus, what's the,
No, I think that's fine, but we don't wanna come in here a year from now and we're putting another unit up for senior care and all of a sudden, whoa.
But
we need all this
wouldn't
parking
the,
and
I think the
that.
cross easement, yeah, and I mean, I don't want you to do anything that limits you in the future either. I'm just saying that if you continue with that idea that there's gonna be a cross easement for whatever parking lot is there, and they have access to all these others, then that addresses that problem.
Right. That's no problem.
So it should help you.
Yeah,
it should help, yeah.
It's gonna be that
But-
way anyway.
you don't want to take my advice on, from a legal point of view, I mean, I think that, the fact that the village hasn't, you know, addressed senior per se may be a good thing, may give us more flexibility, and if this would be a solution, I think this would be a good one to pursue, that, you know, with the cross easements, people can, there shouldn't be any lack of parking. Or be pretty extraordinary if there was.
I do have another question that I guess could possibly be related to parking. Are there any concerns about fire apparatus getting around the building?
It's one of MSA's comments that they'll need to check in with the chief. He has done a preliminary review, he didn't have a comment on that. He requested 2 Knox boxes in the building. He wanted the sprinklers per the building code.
Oh, well, but there's nothing in here that,
No, that'll be one of the requirements
okay,
that's adopted.
all right.
So Aaron, we went through your comments, and then Mike, we go through yours?
We had there's some pen and ink comments under general, and at the time, I think they're completing the stormwater calculations on the infiltration basin, and when that's completed, we'll get a stormwater maintenance agreement on that for its long-term maintenance. Getting down to the hydrants, I think that was already discussed and how you're going to do that. We had looked at near the sidewalk, near the angled parking. I think there was something shown on the plan before where it looked like you might need an easement for the sidewalk coming
Yep,
back.
yep, to bump it out,
Pump
yes.
outs.
Yep.
And that looked like a good plan there with the sidewalk right at it. And then, of course, we did have just verifying the fire truck maneuverability. When we looked at the plans, we didn't see anything that would, for instance, eliminate parking for that. So, but it's just kind of checking its turning radiuses through there. I think we've got everything on the impervious area set with Mike Hawkins, who's performing the engineering. And Houston's went over the stockpile location, so that'll be taken care of as part of the erosion control plan. When they get into the full engineering set, they'll submit a land disturbance permit. The stormwater plan will be have been reviewed and through approval at that time. So that'll be the last step before construction of the facility. Then just kind of weighing in on, you know, the easement again. If you have one lot or one parking lot rather than creating, you know, a bunch of easements, and something should come up, it's a lot easier to create and release one. So if you got one area for 14 spaces, it looks like that's probably closer to grade than the one down at the apartments below. So that would probably be it sounded like somebody had a really good remedy. And once we have all that, we would be, again, completing the land disturbance permit, and the process would be complete. So as long as our comments are conditioned, that process would be fulfilled as part of the conditional approval.
Can I make a motion? I would move that we approve the precise implementation plan for a 62-unit senior apartment complex with a 4,400 square foot community room with the conditions set forth, with the 4 conditions that are set forth in the staff's recommendation, with the following change to the first condition. And the first condition, this motion would also require that the additional language be added that, well, one, it needs to be changed to say 62 indoor spaces.
That was staying the same, right, the number of?
It'll be 62, is that right? 62 indoor?
62 units, but that's, the footprint of the building is staying the same, and it's the same number.
The square footage of the building stays the same. Yeah, the number of units could flex one.
The
or
number
two.
of parking spaces in the basement stays
The
the same.
basement parking stalls stay the same, yes.
Okay.
At 66.
So that's 66.
That stays the same at 66. There's,
Correct.
I want to make sure I understand. There's 40 then that are, I'm looking here, there's 40 of them though that are,
41 surface? Is that right?
Yep.
I'm sorry, 41
I show
surface.
44.
41 surface.
They
And
changed-
the revised.
It's on the
Changed it.
front page of your new packet. There's a summary to the right. Bottom
And
right.
then,
66.
So there's 41 spaces that are in the surface lot, is that correct?
yes,
Yes,
24 angled,
correct.
that totals 131 by my math.
all right. So the change we're making is from 44 to 41 spaces for the surface and 24 angled spaces for the area adjacent to Reynolds Street. And that there be a cross easement for parking with, I think it was what, the gray, is that the gray building? Is that right, or parcel? I wasn't sure what parcel that was. What parcel are we talking about, the one that's for the 14
The
spaces?
memory care.
The memory care, okay, that there be an easement for parking, cross easement for parking, or an easement for parking, I guess, with the memory care unit.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
So, on the, I just want to understand the motion clearly. So we're strictly doing basically a restriction to make sure that it's attached to this memory care?
Just
Only?
a cross easement for parking.
Yeah, we're just
Parking.
trying to make, we just want
Yeah,
to make sure
only
that.
for that section though, not for the rest of the premises?
That's the motion, yes.
Okay, just want to be clear. All right.
Okay, well, the motion doesn't reflect MSA's concerns? Because you don't, in the village recommendation, you don't have anything about fire apparatus. Because the fire department hasn't reviewed it yet.
So I guess, Mick, that would be a friendly amendment, would be add the conditions from the village engineer as well as the village planner.
I would request that that be added to the
Okay.
motion.
Phyllis?
Second.
Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to recommend approval of the precise implementation plan for the what'd you call it, Dwight? The
Drumlin.
residences. Okay, Drumlin residences. And independent living apartments, which would feature around the 62 to 68, you're keeping the footprint the same. And a 4,400 square foot community center as part of the Arrowwood Village planned unit development with the conditions set forth by the village planner and the village engineer, with the amendment of having a cross easement developed between that parcel and then the memory care parcel. Does that sound right, Mick?
Yeah, I think you addressed the 40 units, 40 spaces on the surface and 24 in the angle.
41.
Oh, I'm sorry, I keep saying 41 with the 24.
Okay, so we have the motion and second, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Back to the village board.
That's Monday then, Aaron?
And it looks like a pretty light agenda. Technically, that's the lame duck meeting, but we have no lame ducks this year. But we traditionally try to keep that short, so I think if you were here at 6:30 or so, you'd probably be just fine.
I'll make sure to bring up the comments regarding the senior ordinance.
Okay, item 9, comments from commission members. Fred?
Nothing.
Phyllis? Mick?
No.
Kyle?
Nope.
You guys aren't very talkative tonight. Okay, item 10, future agenda items. Do we want to explore down the road the senior housing, potentially look at something? I'm just throwing that out there as a potential, should that be something we should be looking at, or?
Well, just, I think in general, you're looking at it, and I mean, I think that's something that Aaron should, can make a recommendation on whether we pursue or not, so.
Okay.
If we're going to do that, I think we should look at whether we should have a different standard for ones versus 2-bedroom units. That may be the issue we're having, is that we're looking at 2s for every, requiring 2 for a 1-bedroom unit may be more than is required.
Come back next time. We can do comparisons with other communities, and I don't know if there's some other standards we can look at engineering wise.
This looks similar to the one that was built in Sun Prairie, trying to think, it's just like a block or two south of the main
The
drag.
lighthouse.
Yeah, I'm not sure would it look similar to it?
This one's a little nicer looking than that one.
Well, yeah. They always do, Houston's always do a nice job of that. Okay, anyone else got any ideas for any future agenda items, or?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn, it's non-debatable, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained,